Welcome. Today, Loren and I are doing the third in a three-part series that we've been done. It's, I think, our ninth webinar that we've done together. I posted in the chat at the very top of it the other sessions. And today's topic is 3 ways to stop attracting the wrong clients to your business. And I'm really excited to have this conversation. Loren and I have been sort of flirting around the edges of this conversation in all of the other webinars that we've done. And so we decided to organize this and actually get right at the heart of it in stopping that idea. We welcome questions and comments in the chat, and we'll do our best to get to them. A little bit of housekeeping in the front, as I mentioned. I've posted in the chat the previous links to the previous webinars that we did in this series, which is Path to Profits. That's what this, increasing profitability by working with law firms. We did one on July 28th and we did one on September 16th, and both the links to those webinars are live in the chat at the top. I also linked to the previous 2 webinar series we did, Earn More, Work Less, Increase Profitability by Working with Law Firms, which is, I guess, a similar thing, but that was in that was earlier, and then that was the first half of this year, and then expand your practice by owning your expertise and earning what you're worth. And you'll see all 3 of those webinars linked, and they're all really good content. So before we to set the stage, Loren, just to make sure everyone knows a little bit about you, could you tell me, just let the group know a little bit about your background and how you came to be a professional coach? And then, the second would be setting the stage for what we're going to learn.
Would love to do that, Jonathan, and appreciate our partnership that we've been developing together, really being able to give bookkeepers, accounting professionals exactly what they need to have a profitable practice and to highly serve their clients who hopefully are in the attorney niche. What I would say about my background is I'm a sports psychologist turned business coach. What I have found is there's a lot of similarities between the two, but some of the differences is that athletes and accounting professionals wear different uniforms. You're looking for different numbers, and also that athletes get coaching from the very beginning, someone on the outside giving them insights and feedback to be able to really be a top performer, the best of their abilities. Whereas accounting professionals, we're entrepreneurial, we tend to be fiercely independent, we like doing things our own way, don't easily ask for help. During my evolution, I've developed a niche and a specialty. The niche is working primarily with accounting professionals, helping them to be able to double their income working half the time. And the specialty is being able to price your services of value, because about 57% of accounting professionals leave money on the table and undercharge for their services. And I'm on a mission to change that. That is pretty much my background. As far as the series go, as Jonathan was mentioning, this is the third in a 3-part series called Path to Profits. The first one is to earn more with cleanup projects, because there's a lot of ways that you could be actually making more money with your cleanup projects, and you might not be aware of it, or you're doing some things for free, or you end up with a non-ideal client because maybe you onboarded them too quickly. And we talked about how to be able to do things a little bit differently to avoid those things. The second one in the series is increase your value by creating irresistible packages. This is where you start to separate your fees from time, you bundle your services together, and when you do that, you're focusing on the outcome and the benefits as opposed to the task that you're doing. You're able to actually earn more money without doing any additional work. And today we're going to look at how to stop attracting the wrong clients to your business, because when you're doing things that you think you ought to be doing, it might be actually calling someone to work with you or reach out to you who doesn't fully value what you have to offer, or is really looking for just the cheapest person. And there's some things that you could be doing, and we're going to show you how to do that this time around to avoid talking to those non-ideal clients and really attract the ones who get you, respect you, and are not price sensitive. They're actually happy to pay your fees. And I know, Jonathan, you put the links for the first two of our series in the webinar. And maybe just as we're going through this, to once again do it again so that it's not just at the top of the chat.
Okay. And the other thing I forgot to mention in my thing that I put into the link is a new LeanLaw video. Here's that link that Loren just asked. I just tagged it in 11:06. So Loren, one quick question before we jump ahead, because I'm going to put a poll up in a second. But how does, if we have these three topics, the first one was about cleanup, the second one was about packages. How does that help? Like, how does that stage this third, focus on attracting the wrong clients? I mean, why, and we're going to get into it in more detail, but just a little tease why cleanup and irresistible packages really stage or sort of the precursor to the concept of, attracting the right client. Is there a short summary there?
There is a short summary there. Part of what I'm always looking for with the people who are in my community that I work closely with is where you might be leaving money on the table, where with that and being able to earn more, grow your bank account without having to work additional hours. The two things that really are key to it is the cleanups, because a lot of times you start working with someone by doing a cleanup first before you go into a monthly service with them. There are so many areas where the cleanups actually are the start or the root of the problem of ending up with someone who's price sensitive or not an ideal client. And let's just stop it right at the root, at the very beginning, which is why we started there. And then the second thing is, after you do the cleanups, I teach my clients to roll them into monthly packages. And so that is phase two. But really, a lot of it you want to be looking at is how do we even avoid having a bad client or non-ideal one? And this comes actually out of my 5-step system called the Ultimate Pricing Formula. And with that, the very first.
Hold on. We got to do a poll first. I don't mean to interrupt you, but we got to do a poll first because you're going right into. So I'm going to do a quick poll because we want to get some information. So hold on one sec.
Sure.
There's the poll. Sorry, Loren. I just didn't want to miss this opportunity.
Please go ahead and do the poll. Basically, do you have an ideal client? You either work with everyone, you serve multiple industries, or you have defined your niche. Okay,
so we're about 20 seconds into it, and I've got almost everyone there. I'm going to end polling. So the answer is most of you serve multiple industries, but a good percentage say that they defined their niche. I think it'll be interesting to do this afterwards and say, did you really define a niche? Did you really do that? And certainly there's a certain percentage of folks that didn't that. So you were going to jump into something about pricing, and I want you to go back to that, but it's, let's go back and get into that. So just because I interrupted you, maybe start over and say, why is pricing important in this moment? Why do we start here?
Okay, let's do a rewind.
Yeah.
And I'm going to talk about my system that I take my accounting professionals through is called the Ultimate Pricing Formula. And the very first step that I go through with all my clients is figuring out who your ideal client is, because that's like the foundational piece. It influences your marketing, it influences the copy you put on your website. If you go to network meetings, whether in person or virtually, it influences what you say or who you're looking for, who you partner with, everything. It's that foundational piece of knowing who your ideal client is, and that is what we're getting deeply into today. The second thing is about how to communicate your value, and that's by knowing what steps you take your clients through or having a system to help your clients get an end result. It's similar to what I'm doing right now, which is sharing my 5-step system from the Ultimate Pricing Formula. And I help my clients define their system also because it's a way to communicate your value. Number 3 is how to package your services together. That is something that we went to in our second webinar in the series. Jonathan shared the link. You can get all of that right there. but it's about separating your fees and time and bundling your services together. The fourth part is pricing your services to separate your time from your fees, because when you separate your fees from time, you actually earn more because you're focusing on what your clients actually really care about, which is your expertise and your ability to solve a problem for your clients, as opposed to how much time it's going to take. And then the fifth part is how to market and enroll ideal clients without selling, because the majority of accounting professionals that I know, they're introverts. They don't really like the marketing part that much, or they're not really sure how it works. And they definitely don't like the sales part, because that you don't have to sell. When you have what I call a value conversation, then you're focusing on what is in the client's best interest and learning what they want to achieve. And by asking great questions, then they naturally ask you, how does this work? Those are the 5 steps: is knowing your ideal client, being able to understand your system and articulate it, packaging your services, value pricing them, and knowing how to attract ideal clients to you and have a value conversation, because you don't want to be salesy. That
Yeah,
is
and
pretty much it, Jonathan.
yeah, well, I think, and I want to just reinforce this because I work obviously continuously with lawyers and with bookkeepers and accounting professionals. And I think one of the most challenging things that this community has is articulating value. And if you can get into a value conversation with a customer or potentially a lawyer, it means you understand their practice and their needs. And you get out of the sort of commodity of, I do bookkeeping, I do reconciliation, I do, whatever it might be, that's very sort of commoditized, monthly, transactional, and you get into this trusted relationship. And this is what my interpretation is, that if you can aspire to having a value conversation, that directly, to reinforce what you just said, dictates earning potential. It dictates joy, because now you're having a really intellectual conversation with a client, and not, I'm not saying there's not joy in the mechanics of reconciliation, because a lot of these folks love numbers, but the idea that you're really becoming involving in this trusted advisor. And I think down the road that dictates to lifestyle, which you've talked about, the idea of getting out of, the monotony, I shouldn't say, man, again, don't want to say, but evolving out into, the mechanics of the day-to-day and running the business. So let's go backwards a little bit. I don't know this audience explicitly, but many in this community started as bookkeepers, and generalists working, with a lot of firms. And one of the folks on there, 2 of the folks on here already are still doing that. How does this affect their practice? Meaning that they started in the sense that they were just trying to get a client and trying to do reconciliation, or maybe they were working for someone else, but now they're saying, I want to grow and expand and become, think of more value and think of attracting that right client.
The very first thing I want to start with, Jonathan, is if somebody decided to stop being a W-2 and having their own business, then kudos to you for making that leap, because so many accounting professionals just dream or talk about doing it, and they never take that step. If you've done that, I want to absolutely acknowledge that. The first step for many is you start out as a generalist. That means that you're working with a very wide variety of clients. You know a little bit about all of their different businesses. However, you don't gain enough expertise at any one. That's the very first thing that I see when you are a generalist. The other thing that happens is that in the beginning, you need clients, because that you're willing to work with everyone, even though in the long run, not everyone might be a great fit for you personality-wise or based on what their profession is. That's something to think about. Is in the beginning, you might lack boundaries. And then you're holding on to a non-ideal client for much too long because you don't want to fire them, or you're afraid of letting them go because you need the money. The other thing to look at is, if you're a generalist, you're trying to appeal to everybody. It makes your message, when you're out there talking about it, whether on social media through marketing or at a networking event, it makes it really difficult to be able to attract specific clients to you, because you're trying to market to everybody. It's more difficult to try to appeal to everybody than just a particular niche, like the attorney niche. The fourth thing is that if you're a generalist, then you are seen as a commodity to your clients, where you're a cost as opposed to an investment. This means you're remaining price competitive, and when you're price competitive, you will attract price sensitive clients. Those are some of the things to think about when you're a generalist. You're a jack of all trades. You need to work with everybody. It makes marketing more difficult, and it keeps you price competitive, which attracts those price sensitive clients.
Well, what the line I liked that you just said that I hadn't heard you say before, even in our prep, is you're a cost versus an investment. I mean, think about the power of that concept. Is that, when someone, if you're having this value-based conversation, someone's thinking, okay, I'm going to invest in this. They're really not hung up on the money. I mean, they might be, obviously they're spending money, but if they see the value, it becomes a non-issue really in the money, because they see where the journey is, and thinking yourself in the investment. And I will say, and we're going to get into this a little bit later, but just saying that you're niching in law is not even necessarily specific enough potentially. And I just did this morning. We had an old sort of services business with LeanLaw that I led, and I had one lingering client, and I wrote her an email this morning saying I'm done, because we just don't do it anymore. And it felt all this stress about actually divorcing that client, but it was incongruent with where LeanLaw wanted to go. And I sort of let it go because I liked her and it was helpful. And I sort of talked myself into saying it wasn't that much work. But every time I would get that email from her, this is a true story, this just happened this morning, it created this stress because it drove me into this other focus that wasn't productive. So that's, I mean, when you're talking about the challenges of divorcing old clients, so we're going to get into that. I guess I'm putting the cart before the horse a little, because the next question I really have is, when we think about what do you do first? I mean, so we kind of talk about the importance of niching, we talk about the value, we talk about those things, and there's an emotional side, and then there's a tactical side to how do you proceed? How do you, if you don't want to work with everyone, what are the things you need to do to move forward? What should they consider?
Well, first of all, I think that what you talked about with your client is very, very true for accounting professionals also. You have people maybe that first started with you, and they're now your legacy clients. How do you let go of them if you're moving in a new direction? It feels like a disservice, and you have a service-oriented business. It seemed counterintuitive. That's part of the problem and the challenge that so many accounting professionals have, that I really help them work through, is who to keep and who to let go of. The very first thing as you're moving that direction is you might want to grade your current clients from A to F, A, B, C, D, F, just like you were getting a grade in school in physical education or art or science or math. Go ahead and lay out, whether virtually or actually, all of your client files, give them a grade of A to F, and then really it gives you some insights into who are the Fs, who are the A's. You might see some similarities between all your Fs, some similarities between all your A's. You start to get insights. But what I would say is you want to start to get rid of the Fs first. Those are the ones that when you do make this move and you get more specific, you let go of the Fs first.
Can I ask a question? Because I want to, before you get into the next pieces of this, you and I went back and forth in this, and I want to share this with the audience. How do you manage in this grading piece, how do you manage the subjective versus the objective concept of grading, right? Because there's the emotional subjective. I really like, this person, I really like her, and I, like working with her, but the objective side says we don't make money, it's distracting. I mean, I can really count that. So how do you come up with an F versus an A? I know you're going to talk about some other things in this, but I think it's important to help this community grade. Like, what do you grade on?
Well, one of the things is first going back to knowing who your ideal client is. What are the specific qualities that your ideal client has? And those are the people, if they were like on that type of person was cloned in on your calendar all day, every day, that would be a beautiful thing. You love working with that person. Then think about what are some of the qualities of your headache clients. the ones that when you know that they're on your calendar, you're doing work for them, or they're sending you another email, or they're texting you for the third time that day, like, oh my gosh. And they're actually more costly having them than they are profitable. And start to become aware of those things. There's two different ways, Jonathan, to be able to look at them. We often hear about demographics. We want to know their education, their profession, whether they're married. Those are the things that we typically think about when we're looking at clients. But there's another component that I think is even more important, and that is the psychographics. That is the qualities and the characteristics of the people that you work best with, the people who appreciate, value, and respect what you bring to the table. They are the ones that follow through. I believe that grading them according to the psychographics is more important than the demographics. The reason that I say that is because if you're looking just at demographics of where they live, their profession, possibly how much they make, their education, it might be that not everybody in a particular demographic is an ideal fit for you personality-wise. You just might not like everybody just because they have all the check marks of the demographic. And that's why I encourage you to look at the more subjective, the psychographics instead of the demographics.
Yeah, I think that's important to check in, because you know, it's not just about you can't just look at a balance sheet, or excuse me, a profit and loss on a particular client and say, oh, this is a good client because we earn a lot of money. You know, most of these folks on this list are running small businesses, and it's very, you know, it's very draining to have a bad client. It's draining emotionally, it's draining there. So it's understanding the subjective against the objective. But I don't think you can do it completely subjectively, right? You do want some baseline about, you know, are they in my niche, or do we make them profitable, or are they the right size? So let's continue on, because I just didn't want to skip over that grading piece, because I didn't want to leave them hanging. There's some other kind of components of this idea of trying to whittle as to what you can consider. So you maybe expand on that a little bit for me.
Anyway, if you want to start moving into being more specific about and really cherry picking your clients, not working with everybody any longer. Like I said, get out all your client folders, go ahead and grade them. That's the first step. The second thing is looking at niche. And then the third thing would be specialty. I'm going to go ahead and define the two. A niche is a particular industry that you might specialize in that particular industry. Some people have only one industry that they specialize in. Some people have two. It is just about what is right for you. There's no right or wrong. I will let you know with my journey, it took me several years to define my particular niche with accounting professionals. For a long time, Jonathan, I actually was putting my feet in two different ponds. I had the accounting professionals, but then I also had people that were in the marketing profession also, because there were some things that were opposite of them, and I liked the variety. And I recognized that trying to market at both sides was really not very effective for me. And then after a couple years of working with both, I decided to really just own the accounting profession. And now I solely work with accounting professionals on how to be able to earn more money in their business. So I defined one particular niche. And when I did that, it actually became easier. The other thing that happened is more opportunities started coming to me because I started gaining credibility and recognition in that particular industry, as opposed to when I was straddling two different ones. The other part is the specialty. The specialty is, what is it that you particularly do for your clients? What is the thing that you fix maybe? What is the outcome, the specific outcome that your clients get from working with you? Is there something maybe that you specialize with regarding forecasting? For attorneys, maybe it is looking at how they do compensation for their partners, because there's a variety of different ways, and one might be more effective for your clients than the other. It could be that you're helping them with billing and invoicing, where not all accounting professionals do that. And those are some of the things that you might be able to specialize in with your accounting professionals. The specialty that I chose happens to be how to be able to price your services and how to be able to package it to separate your fees from time. Therefore, the three things when you start to move away from being a generalist into really defining what your unique contributions are is grade your clients, develop that niche, which is what profession do you want to specialize in, and look at, do you have a specialty? Do you help with maybe apps? Do you help with forecasting for growth? Do you help with collections to be able to make sure that they are collecting as much money as possible with the work that they're doing? Maybe you help with distribution for their partners in order for them to keep partners on longer as opposed to having a lot of turnover. Those are some of the things to consider.
And it's something interesting while you were saying that, I was thinking about LeanLaw. LeanLaw has a niche in law, and our specialty is QuickBooks integration and the specificity on invoicing and reporting. But even that isn't enough. And we constantly get tension between all of the different disciplines of law. I mean, if we were a tiny little small business, we might say we're only going to do contingency, and we're going to focus, and our specialties would be settlements of cases, meaning workflows around settlements. We, because we're venture backed, can't just go into a tiny little specialty for us because we need to grow and be bigger. And the constant tension inside of LeanLaw is being nimble enough to support all of the different disciplines of law, whether they're a litigation attorney or whether they're a transactional attorney, a family law practice, a contingency. And that we'd love to have tightness or workflows for everyone, we just can't. So and I found that with LeanLaw, by not having to be a professional services invoicing tool, that liberated us as a company to go deep and learn and have these really intimate conversations with law firms. And that's what will happen, is that it's scary to niche, but it's like go and go further and go further, because then now you just have this fluidness. So so we talked about kind of the first step, which is looking backwards, grading, and even in the presence of niching and specialty. So how do is there an ideal way to is there a way to attract the ideal client and sort of repel the non-ideal client, right? So we've done the self-assessment, we've thought about niching and specialties, we've had those hard conversations internally. So now, how do you move that forward? How do you attract the right client and get rid of, or repel is your word, probably a better use, that the wrong client? Repel, because we don't want to just ignore them, we just don't want them to gum up our onboarding and sales process.
Right. Well, I think first of all, it starts with you making a decision that this is something that you want to do. You want to be more selective about who you are attracting to you and who you are actually not attracting to you. And maybe some of the language or the wording that you have, whether it's on your WordPress site, your website, the social media posts, the networking, you're speaking in a way that is like the love language for your ideal client, and it actually doesn't pull in people who are not your ideal clients. Therefore, there are certain things that you do. A lot of times that I talk with accounting professionals, that they tell me that their PETA clients, those headache clients that they have, share certain qualities. Well, it's good to know what are the qualities of those headache clients that you have. Some of the things that I'm hearing is they're price sensitive. Other qualities is maybe they keep you waiting. They might not respond to emails or when you're reaching out to them in a timely manner. Maybe they don't pay your bills on time, or they show up late for client meetings, or are always rescheduling at the last minute. So somehow they keep a lot of my clients waiting. Another thing about the headache clients is they ask for favors or exceptions, but they don't want to pay for them. They expect you to do that additional thing without any compensation for that particular service that you're doing for them. Those clients, for a lot of my clients, the headache clients, are full of excuses. They have reasons for not moving forward or not doing what you're telling them to do or implementing. There's always something going on that keeps them stuck where they are. And it's about everything and everybody but them. They don't always take responsibility well. And the last part is they might not appreciate you, they might not respect you, or they might not be honest with you. And those are some of the things to think about, is you might be attracting some of those people to you when those might not be the people that you actually want to work with. And the way that you're talking about things on social media, your website, or network meetings might be attracting those people unknowingly to you.
So is that kind of part of the previous question we had, in the grading? I mean, seems like it's more details in the grading. And, the thing that I clued in what you just said was, do they extend the same professional courtesy to you as they would to their clients, right? And I find that to be almost demoralizing and totally maddening. And it's actually something that we teach in our sales process, is to talk to the law firm in the way that they talk to you, meaning don't be seen as a subordinate and as a tool, but be seen as a trusted advisor who knows as much about, if not more, the finances of running a law firm than they do, and stand that ground in a respectful way. Because I had to learn attorney compensation tracking. There's a methodology called the HALL and DOR, HALL and DOR. It's a law firm out of Boston, and it's a sort of classic attorney compensation. And I had to learn it. Once I learned it and talked to lots of different attorneys about their mistakes and the hardships, I'm an expert on it now. I mean, to a certain degree. And because of that process, I speak to attorneys at a very candid, intimate way, saying, what's your compensation? How do you do it? And I can have that conversation. And that just establishes me as a subject matter expert. Then I can explain how LeanLaw, the value of LeanLaw, can help them make those decisions. And that's where you get into the value of it. So.
And one of the things that you're bringing up that I think is really important to speak to that is, by knowing that compensation model, and that is prevalent with a lot of legal firms, is it actually creates competition within the firm. But because it's the standard process, it's the status quo, they don't know that there might be other alternatives. By you bringing that conversation to the table, it now puts you in an advisory position where you might be able to bring them a different compensation model that creates more cohesion or teamwork. And by doing that, they actually can raise their billable hours and income by working collaboratively together within a firm, as opposed to competing with each other for compensation. So I think that you bring a really valuable point to the table, Jonathan.
And that also just works in the entire opposite, where a lot of attorneys and law firms in today have a tension because they feel this need, I can go out on my own and earn a lot. So by putting a HALL and DOR model, which is really driven on, the idea of who originated the work, who brought it in, the finder, who minds it, the responsible attorney, and then who works it. Actually, by inversing it, it helps some cultures inside of law firms that they don't see it as competitive, but they're giving those attorneys an entrepreneurial opportunity to be rewarded for their efforts, and it mitigates them shedding off and starting their own practices. So it can work both ways. The point is, the niche might be law, the specialty might be attorney compensation, and the diversity of different types of compensation and having some fluidness is an area of expertise that then goes into value. Just to reinforce kind of what we were talking about earlier, let's shift gears and talk a little bit about, so we've made these decisions, we're thinking about it, we've done a lot of analysis, and now moving forward, one of obviously the first introductions to any of these folks is through their marketing materials, right? That's many times you might get a referral from someone, but then the first thing the referral does is go and Google's that accounting firm. So those messages, what you're communicating. So what are the key marketing what are the key messages that you have uncovered that help attract the right client, repel the wrong client?
Well, as we were preparing for this,
or what's the wrong one,
today,
I should say.
As we were preparing for this conversation today, Jonathan, what I did is I went on several different websites for accounting professionals, and I took some examples of things that are actually on websites, and a lot of websites, and wanted to bring these out because they actually attract the wrong client to you, or they position you as a generalist where you're seen as a commodity as opposed to an investment, or as you were talking about for yourself, you're seen as a technician as opposed to a trusted advisor. And some of the examples that I found was, we provide affordable solutions. That's on a lot of websites.
Hate that. I can't get, please,
Mhm.
I'm going to try not to react, but I've done the same thing in
Okay,
terms
you
of
might just
like,
want to mute
and
yourself
it's
here,
like,
Jonathan.
hey, just don't do that. Anyways, keep going. Sorry.
When we provide affordable solutions, well, that attracts price-sensitive clients to you. The next one is we help you run your book smarter. What that means is absolutely nothing to a potential client. Of course, they want you to run your books smarter than they can themselves, but it focuses on the tactics and the things that you do as a technician, as opposed to the outcome, which might be the solutions or what's possible once you fix that problem for them. The third thing I found is every client of ours gets free year-round tax advice. That shows me that you're leaving money on the table. You don't really understand the full value of your services. The next one I found is no matter what your accounting or tax needs are, we are here to help. Well, that puts you in the pool of a generalist because you're saying that we serve everyone and anyone. That means that I can't tell whether you actually have what it takes to serve my particular needs. The next one is we do AP, AR, HR, payroll. Well, this one's obvious. You're not showing me that you specialize and that you might be specific to the attorney niche or any other niche. You're just doing what a bookkeeper or accounting professional is supposed to do if I hire you. You're like everybody else, which once again commoditizes you and positions you as a technician. And the last one, which is probably my favorite, is we work with small business, medium business, and not-for-profits. Well, that covers the whole gamut, doesn't it?
It doesn't mean anything, and it's every business. But I want to go back to that APHR because I actually nudged Loren to add that one when we were reviewing this, and I think it's one of the most glaring mistakes on how someone positions themselves because they're thinking tactically what they do. And if I'm a lawyer engaging an accounting firm, it's like, of course you do that. It's like buying a car and the salesperson saying it has 4 tires. I mean, it has 4 tires and an engine. And it's like, of course it does, but it doesn't tell me anything about the utility, the safety, the value, what it's going to mean for me. And I think when this is one of the hardest tasks for accounting professionals is to build their website. And it's mostly because they haven't consulted someone like you or done the hard work to go through what is their niche, what is their specialty, what brings joy, what are the bad clients, what are the good clients, what is my value, what is my firm's value, and then translate that into messages that are meaningful to the person who's reading it. Because when a website is done well, and I'll give an example without naming her, we have a friend of LeanLaw, and she maybe 18 months ago, 2 years ago, who had a long tenure as a bookkeeping accounting professional, said, I'm only law. And she has some specialties, but really the niche was the most important. And she basically started to shed all of her old clients. She focused all of her efforts on law, learning, communicating that online. Her online brand became all about law, and she was tied in with Intuit, and so the Intuit specialty was there. I'm really good with QuickBooks, and organically, because of all of this, clients started coming to her. So her marketing efforts paid off, and she's deemed the expert. And when she has a conversation, all of that comes through, and she's speaking to the value. We can do this with QuickBooks and LeanLaw. We can do this with your data and reporting. Oh, we can solve this, compensation tracking problem with this automation. Your accounts payables, rough here. We can use, bill.com. And she's basically using some of the tactical things, but then quickly articulating the value. So I just think this is the precursor things are really critical, but I think the personification of this work into your marketing messages is the most important thing, because even if your website isn't, what I found, Loren, and even if your website isn't perfect, it still forces you to develop the vernacular of how you want to interact with your client and how you want to communicate that. And I just think that's critical. So I'm going to stop because I get really animated with this topic. This one in particular really gets me going. We're going to do a poll real quick. So the poll, let me launch that. Do you have a calendar link on your website? Yes, no. This is auto scheduling. So I could come to your website and I could immediately schedule an appointment with you.
It's not a trick question.
No, well, it is a little trick question. But okay, so we're 50-50, yes and
Okay.
no. And I probably should have qualified it with a second question, which is, are you intentionally not having a calendar on your poll on your website, or you just technically never got there? So
Well, why don't they just answer that in the chat?
okay, yeah. So
Yeah.
if you voted no, is it intentional? So Delia says yes. Okay, and well, I'm curious about that. So Loren, so what's the a little bit of a loaded question, but what's the #1 strategy for bookkeepers to avoid speaking to non-ideal clients? What is that? What is that? No.
I'm going to cut right to the chase. The #1 strategy is remove that calendar link from your website. And some people are going, oh, I can't do that. I'm going to lose a potential client. What if somebody wants to speak to me? But what I want you to look at is to create a process which screens potential clients first, then only give them a link once they're qualified. Because there's only two commodities at this point that I'm aware of. One is money and one is time. Money can come and go. Time, once you lose that moment in your life, you never, ever, ever give it back. And we tend to undervalue our time. We give it away too easily. When you give it away too easily, you end up talking with people who really aren't qualified to speak with you, or they only want to pick your brain and they were never going to work with you anyway. They just wanted the information for free. I want you to protect your time. This creates a boundary. Then you only talk with potentially ideal clients. It then increases enrolling a great client into your practice instead of just anybody. I'm going to go ahead and share my process.
Well, hold on 1 second, because it does a second thing. It mitigates you from having an awkward conversation with someone that you know is not the right client, and having to sort of in person, say, hey, yeah, we're probably not the right fit for you. So not only does it repel them, meaning you get to qualify, which you're going to kind of talk about your system, but it also mitigates that uncomfortable conversation when you're talking to someone. Like, there's times with people in LeanLaw that I know they're not going to buy it, but they scheduled my time and I can't do anything but go through the meeting. We've now put up some barriers to qualify candidates and to sort of put them in buckets. So please, I didn't want to miss that little note, but please move forward.
Right. And I think that what you're talking about is pre-qualification, and you get to screen potential clients before they get time on your calendar. Anyway, here's my process is before anybody gets a link to my calendar, they have to answer a couple questions on a web form that's actually embedded in my website. That is the very first thing. They answer 4 questions. I'll actually give you the link. As soon as I get, I'll put the link in the chat. You can take a look at it. If you want to answer the questions, you're more than welcome to. If you want to use that as a model for yourself, you're more than welcome to do that too. The next thing is my assistant receives an automated notification as soon as someone goes ahead and completes the form. Then he goes ahead and reviews the answer. If they're pre-qualified, which means that they have the criteria that we're looking for in an ideal client, then they receive an email to schedule an initial consult. If they're not a fit for our services whatsoever, they receive an email response with a link to a free resource. But one way or another, they are receiving some type of response from us. There are times now also where they are maybe getting a link to schedule time, but if I'm not sure whether they're fully qualified or not, I'm on the fence, they might get a link to my assistant's calendar first, and then they're having a short conversation with my assistant, and then my assistant determines whether to put them on my calendar for a second conversation. That's some of the things to look at as far as what we're doing. And then here's also an advanced move, is with a systematized process like this, you can delegate the initial consults to a different team member. For example, my assistant can do all of the initial consults if I wanted him to be able to do that. It doesn't have to always be done by you, especially if you don't like the sales part and it's painful. This is a system, And you can train one of your team members to follow the process and do all of the enrolling conversations. And as Jonathan and I were talking as we were preparing for this, I actually told him I'm currently training one of our common clients who is a bookkeeper and uses LeanLaw. I'm training her staff on how to successfully enroll new clients. She's not having any of these conversations. Her staff is doing them for her, and they're actually doing a better job than she was doing because of the fact that she just hated it so much, it was painful. So that's what I suggest you really look at, is remove the calendar and be selective about who gets a link to your calendar.
So I think what's most important to tie into this is, how could you ever mitigate a bad client or write that form unless you did the work before, which is grading your clients, having your niche, having your specialty, right? So they're all tied together. And I think a lot of the group would say, oh yeah, I'll put the form up right away, right? That's going to be a great stopping point for the form. But the challenge is, or the reality is, you know, you can do a little bit of this by putting a form up and doing that. But if you don't do that heavy lifting of understanding what the ideal client is, you don't know what questions to properly ask on the form. The two go hand in hand. And then all of a sudden you get some false positives coming through the system. False positives meaning some people who sneak through who really aren't ideal clients.
And before we go further, it sounds like Dahlia's intentional about not having a calendar link. Christopher said yes. Kathy says, I purposely don't have a calendar on the website. And Denisha said, it's intentional for me too to not have that link. And Dahlia said she loves the idea of the form. I put the link to my online form. It's to my Path to Profit strategy session. And like I said, if you felt like you wanted to have a conversation, go ahead, fill it out, and then let's talk about what it would be like to do this in your business.
Yeah, and I love the idea of delegation. You know, like, you know, Dahlia started the conversation by saying a colleague of hers said that she had to do this. And so she's already got infrastructure that maybe she doesn't have to have that first conversation, or maybe she does want it. You know, but the idea is that we've talked in other webinar series about the idea of being the CEO of your own business, you know, rising up. And one of the first steps is creating processes that allow you to delegate. And this is probably the most critical, which is finding the right clients and repelling the wrong clients. So we're getting towards the end of the hour. I want to ask the group who's out there, feel free to ask any questions through the chat. As you can see, we're managing our conversation and we're managing that. So if you have any specific questions, post them out and we'll get to them in this. So, you know, let's kind of go backwards a little and talk about the exact steps for these accounting professionals to, you know, free themselves from these headache clients. And what I mean by that is, like, you know, we talked about a lot of different things, but let's go back and kind of review that and summarize it.
Sure. Basically, let's just put it out there that potential clients fall into one of two categories. Either they pay a little and want a lot, or they're clients who expect to pay for great results. I want you to go for option number two. I want you to attract those clients who expect to pay for great results. And these are some of the steps to be able to free yourself from a headache client. First, if nothing else, stop competing on price, because high value clients really consider your service as an investment instead of a cost. In fact, if you price too low, those great clients are not going to actually believe that you can deliver on your promise. They're going to question whether you actually have the qualities and the skill set. That's the very first thing, is stop competing on price. The second thing is position your service as an investment instead of a cost. That's by really looking at asking great questions when you're first meeting with someone to position yourself as a trusted advisor. Focus on your expertise. Your clients hire you because of your expertise, what you know, your insights, how you can help them grow, not about the processes, the software, the apps, or the things you do technically to be able to keep their books balanced. So realize that they hire you for expertise, and that positions your service as an investment. It starts to put you in that category of trusted advisor. The third thing is, don't sell your services. Nobody wants to be sold, and the majority of accounting professionals I know don't like the selling process either. What you want to do instead is educate your potential clients about why your services might be the best choice for their needs, or educate them about how to be able to solve a problem. And that's what you want your marketing to be, whether it's on social media, at network events, when you're speaking, on your website. You want to be educating your clients about the problems that they have and how you have the solutions to those problems. The fourth thing is pre-qualify potential clients. You're not obligated to talk with everybody. I'm just going to say that again. You are not obligated to talk with everybody. Start to create a boundary, even if you've never had a boundary before. And this creates a workflow or a processes that you can then implement to screen potential clients and decide whether they get a link to your calendar or not. And then the fifth one is to slow down your onboarding process. When you onboard someone too quickly into a monthly service with you, you end up with headache clients. You end up with non-ideal clients that you just didn't realize in the beginning, or maybe there was a little bit of a hint, but you weren't fully sure and you went ahead and brought them on anyway. And that's just a costly mistake down the road. I want to teach you how to go ahead and slow down your onboarding process, because this way, when you slow down, you actually determine if they're a good fit for your service, and they determine whether you're a good fit for their needs as well before you go into a monthly service with them. Because having non-ideal clients actually lowers your profits, they drain your energy, they demand more than your ideal clients do, and they, as a result of it, lower your bank account. So those are some of the things to be able to avoid onboarding those potential clients.
So I want to take a step back because we have a few extra minutes and talk a little bit about this idea of cost versus investment. And I want to drill it down into legal, because obviously everyone here has an interest in legal. So when we talk about niche, from our perspective, legal may not be even tight enough. It might not even be a tight enough niche. So you might think about niching as to how attorneys bill. Now, some attorneys bill hourly. You know, transactional attorneys, business attorneys, litigation attorneys can do that. They bill hourly. And understanding everything about the mechanics of how someone bills hourly might be a specialty, and a niche might be the practice areas that support that. You might want to focus on a niche of contingency attorneys, those that have their outcome based on their compensation based on some settlement. They have a whole unique characteristic and personality about what their needs are: cash flow, expense management, expense reimbursement, trust compliance. And that could be personal injury attorneys, that could be, class actions for larger firms. And then you might have a third grouping that does everything on flat fees, like family law. They do estate planning and other sort of flat fee. And of course, there's always firms that do a hybrid, and the bigger you get, the there. So knowing the different disciplines of law and being able to niche into those, or being able to find those specialties, then you can develop your offering. So if a personal injury attorney comes in, you're going to ask the questions like, what's your pain point? I bet cash flow and cash flow management's really hard. I bet case settlement's really hard. These are expertise that we have to help you do this with these accounting tools. And you're talking to them in offering the value. The second thing about cost versus investment that came up, and I guess I want to share with the group as well, is this idea of what's the investment? Well, it goes back to the pain. So things that we hear a lot in LeanLaw, one is trailing AR. Law firms have a hard time collecting funds. And this is something that's really important, because law firms in many instances will write off money because they don't want to get into any scenarios where the client is going to the bar association or some other thing and saying, hey, I felt like their services, that they weren't completely straightforward with the services. So they tend to just say, we're just going to let that go. And mostly it's because they didn't have good AR workflows at the get-go. They didn't have good information. So when the actual invoice was presented to the client in that first opportunity that they were asking questions, hey, why aren't you paying? They let it go. It's now 60, it's now 90, it's now 120 days, and they tend to write it off. So AR and understanding AR. And that's also the second thing of that, is understanding it from the general partner's lens to their junior attorneys. helping that general partner understand AR and its trailing and aging relative to all their partners so they can go in and work with each one individually. The second thing is compensation tracking. We've mentioned that a lot, but that tends to be an enormous pain point around law firms. And there's different models for it. And some are very primitive, like they basically have a salary and at the end of the year, there's some closed door meeting where some people get some things, but they need data to do that. And then there's some very advanced and transparent, like the Helen Door. The third area is compliance with trust accounting. And again, trust accounting is very different from a contingency firm that basically has a settlement, they get a big dump of cash and have to disperse it, than that of a family law or some other firm that might do a retainer up front, and then at some point the retainer is satiated and they just doing hours. So I know that's not what's on the agenda here today, but when we talk about this cost versus investment, developing storylines about capabilities and success on just those are three examples, and then looking at different niches and those specialties really play into helping that marketing messaging for that. And those are three areas that, I mean, there's others, but those are three areas that are really on lawyers' minds a lot. Compliance, because they can lose their bar, and it's really tricky at times in some of the operating systems. And then compensation is not just about what they make, but it also is about the sustainability of the organization and retaining employees. And then of course, AR is just the health of the firm. Okay, Loren, we've talked about a ton, and thank you for indulging me on that. What should they do next? We've given them a lot of information. You've talked about your services, so give them the pitch about what you do and what they could do next relative to you.
It's not a pitch, it's an invitation.
I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. Thank you for that correction.
Anytime, Jonathan.
I know you well enough that I shouldn't. But
it's
please.
Okay. We can banter all we want.
Wrap us up.
Okay. Anyway, I put the link in the chat. If you feel that you're ready to separate your fees and time, you're leaving money on the table, you have what I call an upper limit problem, where you have a lot of clients, you're earning good money, but you had the potential to earn more. However, you don't want to work any more hours because you're tired of sacrificing your personal life. Then let's go ahead and have a conversation. I offer a complimentary path to profit strategy session. I put the link in the chat. It's at businesssuccesssolution.com/let's talk. As we've been talking about throughout this conversation, it's an opportunity for me to ask great questions, focus on what's going on with you, what you want to achieve, and seeing if it is a fit for working together. So if that interests you, please go ahead and register for a Path to Profit strategy session at businesssuccesssolution.com/let's talk.
Loren, as always, a lively and fun conversation. I appreciate the collaboration and partnership that we have, and this opportunity to talk to the community. Thank you all for attending today. I will say that we will be having, Loren and I are going to be doing another round of these series in the second quarter of 2021. And LeanLaw will be doing its State of the State to our LeanLaw Accounting Pro community, talking about the year ahead and where the company's going technologically from a business development standpoint, and from the LeanLaw Accounting Pro program, because we see exciting things happening. Our relationship with Intuit is blossoming, and so there's lots of fun things that are happening here in the company as we grow. Loren, I wish you, I won't probably talk to you before Thanksgiving, so have a great Thanksgiving, and everyone be safe, and thank you. Have a great day. I'm going to end the session now.
Take care.
Bye.